We have a forum. We have a forum. And welcome, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So did everybody get a chance to read the minutes and have any input?
No comments for me.
Some for me. David? No. Well, I got it, looks good.
Make a motion, we adopt the minutes as presented.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
I
It's unanimous. Do I have to report that individually?
It has to be a roll call.
Roll call, okay. Bill, yes.
Yes.
Yes. David. Wells
yeah,
and Jeff,
Jeff Heller, yes.
and I approve it. It's unanimous. Okay, well, Matt, would you give us some updates?
Sure, yeah, it hasn't been too long since the last meeting, so. We're into summer hours, they're starting this week. Fridays can always be interesting when we close for the first time. Regardless of how many different ways we message that. It definitely catches some people off guard, and as people are heading out of town for the weekend, it can be a tough conversation.
Was it last week or just this week?
This is the first Friday closure at noon.
I gotta say, a couple of years ago, I was guilty as charged. I drove up with the full car and went, oh my God.
Right,
And not only did that, I said, well, what else business I do? And I went to town hall.
yeah,
You know?
Wells has.
Well,
his
we
hand
should
up.
work coming from a
Wells
distance.
Chair Wells has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, yes. Yes.
hi
Will?
guys. So I'm on I signed up for the email list for the RTS. And so far I haven't received anything, but for this Friday's closure, I think it would be a great idea to send out to the meeting to that email list, maybe on Wednesday or Thursday.
the alerts,
That those, yeah, that just to mention that to let everybody know that the summer hours are starting, so that it may not get that many people, but at least those people that signed up for the alerts will be happy they did.
great.
Thank you.
Then for us operationally, we are obviously really ramping up yard waste operations, increasing material inbound. We're starting to screen not really last fall's leaves, we're starting to screen last year's leaves that are finally mature. We probably have something around 2,000 yards ready to go, but we've had issues with the screener and some repairs. So we're a little behind on just the volume of screened compost we have, but it's sufficient for residents. We've been screening loam for highway projects, berm work, and also residential projects. We've had 2 paint days since last we met. We did the April paint day and May, just this last weekend, about a cubic yard per event. Recycling continues to trend in a good direction for us. Cardboard is the same. Paper is up $5 of revenue to $37.67 or 76. Single stream costs and commingle costs have also, they're less than they were. So we're about $15 to $20 better, but that's a cost. So it's less of a cost now. Our staffing remains, we're fully staffed, which is a great place to be. Our assistant superintendent, Justin McGregor, just completed his MMA Suffolk certificate in local government leadership and management, which is a pretty big deal. I think Karis went through that program. I think a lot of people in DPW who kind of want to move on to the next levels go through that program. So that's really solid. I'm sure he did excellent in his grades. I know as I was monitoring it and getting his feedback, he was getting A's in that class. So, and then our newest employee is a laborer, and as per required, he needed to get his CDL to become part of the snow program, drive the heavier dump trucks and plow equipment, so he received that on his first try. And our trainer, one of the trainers for DPW is at the transfer station. So it's a really good internal program. Other communities have sort of struggled with that, so Derek's one of the early successes for that, and he's through his probation period with that, with making his CDL license. Last time we talked about a has materials shed that we were going to be ordering. It is ordered and will be delivered within the weeks it's being fabricated. We're ordering new containers for the drop walls at the transfer station. There is some difficulty getting the spec right with the engineering people at the Container Waste Quip, the company that supplies those. But we're also ordering containers for the high school for their trash and recycling. We're ordering for the Elliott, the Pollard, and for police and fire needs a backup container for recycling at this point. So we've got those ordered. Definitely good to keep those in rotation and replacement. They get rusted and bottoms can become corroded. We're still waiting on the service delivery study to get posted a second time. We do know that we're gonna go out to state contract bidders, PRF, which is professional services, state contracts, and two of the companies who we expect to bid on it are on that state contract. So it's ready to go. We just need to issue it. Hopefully that study begins in September with kind of an overview of our operations, followed by outreach into the community to kind of assess what they're looking for, followed by a series of I believe they're required to come up with 4 different models that they're gonna present to you and to the select board and to DPW team to say, these are options, these are costs associated with it, and so it's gonna be interesting. Hopefully that study will be delivering in the later spring of 2025 if it starts in September. The RTS has some major contracts that are expiring this year. Our recycling contract, which is currently with Casella, is gonna end in the end of, it's at the end of August. So that's a pretty interesting transition. We've had a really good relationship with Casella. But Waste Management or some of these other companies, we'll see what they can offer. We have our transportation and hauling of municipal solid waste and recycling. We've had excellent service with this current company, but they're sort of expensive. Their rates are increasing pretty steeply. And then finally, the company that handles our food waste and collects from the schools is that contract will come up at the end of August. So that's the organics recycling. And I don't know if you all have met Eliza Echeverry.
Yep, you got it right.
Okay, who is the director of finance and admin for DPW, and she is working with the DPW and the RTS crew specifically on those contracts. Luckily for me and for my team, she has a very solid background in solid waste and recycling, so I'm just looking forward to working together on those contracts and just the service delivery study.
Thank you.
Yeah, any questions?
So on the, in the minutes from the last meeting, you had mentioned that you were expanding the food waste collection program at one of the schools. Is there a cost offset when we increase the food recycling and program that the disposal costs for regular trash at the school goes down?
Probably a little bit, it's not made, it actually isn't an offset yet, and we hope it will be. I track the cost per ton out of each of those locations, and when a program becomes efficient, the cost per ton really drops. But at some of the newer schools like Newman in specific, where we just expanded, we're not seeing a consistent diversion that would lead us to see a major reduction in the trash and offset in the food waste, because the food waste, they do have a kind of a baseline charge just for showing up and servicing those containers, and when there's only a small volume in those containers, the price just to get them there for the pickup, that baseline cost sort of throws off that per ton rate. But I'm assuming as this program grows and as sort of MSW costs rise, we're gonna see a better relationship between those two. At this point, we're seeing a pretty good relationship between the cost of collecting food waste at the transfer station, the cost of MSW going out. That relationship is beneficial and cost effective, but we're doing about 13 tons from the transfer station. We might only be doing 2 tons out of the Newman, or maybe even less.
Yeah.
That program is kind of, it needs some help, a little bit of help.
Okay,
It started off pretty well. They had a good reduction through the first couple of weeks, but I think, you know, maybe in the fall it needs to be re-energized. I think a lot of the schools kind of need that realignment.
Sure.
But I do, and I can present that at the next meeting if we want to see some of the cost per ton of food waste out of the different schools, because it's variable.
yeah, I don't really need to see a presentation on it. I was just wondering, because historically there was an issue where there was talk about diversion of trash from the school system, and because of the way their contract was set up, it wouldn't have affected their cost anyway, because it was a straight, you know, cost per service delivery day. So the volume of the waste didn't matter, and it didn't affect the cost to the school. So there was less of an incentive to do the recycling.
Right, we do both. We do all of them, but we don't do the food waste.
Okay,
So that is a savings if we can get that volume up. That means we're not handling it as trash.
sure.
But I think that's a school we're there five times a week anyway, just to collect. So we'd see a reduction in tonnage, but not necessarily a reduction in like that trash, the
Yeah.
truck, the fuel, and the staff time.
Yeah, but I think we had discussed this in a previous meeting, right? There's a janitorial savings as well, right?
I mean, there could be, we haven't, you know, it's probably easier for them through the lunches because they're not. We found that they were changing the trash about 14 times during the lunches before the food waste program started, and then afterwards it was like 3 or 4. So that's a savings on just their time and managing the flow during lunches. That was like the interns. For the nutrition services counted bags, pre-program and post-program. But I don't think those bags were that heavy. So they were pulling bags out just to, you know, they were kind of filling up with the, you know, whatever the styrofoam trays before they were using compostable, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Is there a commercial component to this program as well? I was at Trader Joe's the other day, and I noticed there was a lot of,
Same
there were a lot
company,
of containers, so.
it's the same company, but we don't pay for any of that. That's it, that's Trader Joe's contracting with the same.
Oh, it's
company.
outside the. Okay,
They utilize our vendor. It's, so they're in town already for collecting at the schools and at the transfer station.
but it
So
doesn't
they go
go
to
through
Trader
the
Joe.
transfer.
We don't control that at all.
Any other comments? Or, you know, I think you raised a good discussion point. I don't think, what people think is, I mean, I would love to see the data like that, all right, but given what's on our agenda. Coming up with preparing for presenting the fees to the select board, I don't see there's an urgency, but maybe when there's left, maybe in the fall.
Okay.
You know, where there's some time when you have the, you know, the present, because I think to see the trends along schools, maybe even historical, and see how, Pollard probably is the most ingrained in their culture, because it was the first. Right.
Pollard was a later adopter.
Okay,
It
But
was,
anyway,
I think
see-
Sunita and Broad Meadow were early.
just to see that thing, and I think, having a discussion here, but also getting ready for the study.
Yep.
You know, again, these are one of the, you know, the in-kind services that come from, you know, the transfer station that the town benefits. And I think we, you know, have data and to highlight some of those townwide benefits that people don't see. Okay, and,
Yep.
Does anyone agree with, you know, have any input about further discussion? Okay,
That's pretty much it from our end. I mean. Yeah, the big ones are gonna be those contracts and the service delivery study.
great, thanks. So, the big topic,
So what I provided for the committee is the history of the last six complete fiscal years of total revenues compared to total expenses. And what's very interesting when you look at this is you can see starting in FY 2020 actual, that jump up in the scale revenue, basically what the RTS has been reporting is that there was an uptick in activity going across the scale and clearly haulers. And again, to remind the committee, we hadn't adjusted any rates until FY 24. So it's the same rates that were in effect, and you can see that significant uptick in the scale revenue in 19 from 493,000 up to 710,000 in 20, up to 841,000 in 21. Then it's a back down in 22 to 752,000, and then well over $1 million in FY 23.
gotta be COVID related, I think.
So
People
what-
spent more time at home and cleaned out.
Perhaps 20, I don't, perhaps 20, definitely 21 was COVID, was impacted by COVID. 22 and 23 are not really COVID. I mean, many things have returned to normal in terms of usage. I think that's also a sign that there was increased economic activity, increased trash, and coming across the scale. In the 3-year average of 21 through 23, 888,000 in scale revenue. What's interesting to note is with only with basically 3 months to go, revenues are down. And when you consider the fact that the rate went up, that's telling. Perhaps on the next 3 months, there may be an increase, but that's very telling. That dropped down from 1,070,000 down to 581,000. Also, the same with the bag sales. There was an uptick in 20 and over the scale, but down in terms of bag sales. Probably COVID. Folks probably brought things over the scale. A little more difficult to buy the bags in the stores because of all the lockdowns and stuff that happened. But then there was a significant uptick in 21 on purchase of the bags. And then since 21, it's been declining year after year in terms of using the bag. Now, perhaps that too might be explaining part of the scale increase as folks are just not buying the bag, they're just coming in and going across the scale.
Or wouldn't that show up as, if the more people started to subscribe to the private haulers?
That would also have an impact, correct?
Right, and is the sticker revenue, that's all commercial, right?
It's all commercial activity.
Look at the increase of the, in that, so, you know, maybe much less use of yellow bags and private haulers. That's a trend.
And of course, our question about where the number of contractors that seem to have been coming to the Needham RTS, clearly that's increased, as no
the fee revenue jumped up from sale of stickers, so there's more trucks coming in, which of course makes sense because the scale revenue is back so. And conversely, bag revenue is down.
Can that be coming from out of town in someone?
Would defer to Natalie on that.
So there's definitely material coming in over the scale and it's very difficult to track. If you have a hauler who's doing cleanouts in Needham and they show up with a truck, it's hard to tell if they've stopped in Waltham, Needham, or if it's one load from somewhere. I do think that material comes in from out of Needham. But I think that was part of our thought process in raising the bulky commercial rate is to sort of protect us from becoming the lowest rate around so that we were incentivizing loads coming from neighboring communities to our transfer station because we had a lower rate.
The other positive things, of course, as Matt alluded to earlier, is the recycling activities. Those revenues are up, particularly from metal. Metal that has increased significantly with it peaking out back in 2022, but it's remained pretty solid. And even this year, although many of the receipts are down, metal is still respectable in terms of the revenue that it's generating. Then we look at, of course, you have the total costs shown there. And each year, you're seeing revenue generated by the operations versus costs that basically the deficit is what the property tax is covering. So we also provided you with some key items, contracted services associated with the disposal of solid waste and what's been happening with those costs. The bag themselves, the plastic bags that we sell, they've increased. The company increased the cost from 23 to 24. The large bags, the case of them is 98.11, and the small bag cases are 58.48 compared to 23, where they were 54.96 and 92.21. That's a 6.4% increase in that cost. So just the bag itself has gone up in price. The tipping fee of what we have to pay, which is something that Karis has been alluding to at prior meetings as Matt we got a great bargain with the renegotiated price for the disposal of solid waste at Millbury, but that was a one-time nice drop in price and it's slowly escalating up. FY24 cost per ton went up 3%. When that contract expires, as you've heard both the DPW director and the superintendent solid waste say, is that those costs are going to be much more when we lock into a new contract. And Needham is reaching out to the other communities in preparation on how to move forward. Are we moving forward with the block, which would entice more bidders than if we went out on it. The other cost that's going up, not so surprising, is the the hauling. We have a company that comes and picks up the solid waste and transports it to Millbury. Those costs are up 5.1%. Of course, the industry, that's an industry that's whose wage rates have had to go up. So that's one factor that's impacting their costs. The cost of heavy equipment and such, and some of the environmental changes that the heavy equipment is subject to makes them more expensive, which of course the companies have to try to recover that cost, and then of course just the cost of fuel So all those factors are contributing to the cost of, the contracts that we're getting for the disposal of waste. So, those are, some, very important and major cost drivers within the operation. In terms of, looking at our rates and such, first, as, was mentioned before, somehow we had a mismatch that, televisions, were, priced at $15, but, the flat screens were, at, $20. So we want to correct that oversight by increasing the cost of the television to be the same cost as the flat screens, which would be $20 for disposal. Another thing is to just eliminate it, which we would, of course, have the select board vote, is we haven't been doing we don't have a travel screener for renting, and we haven't rented it in a number of years. So we would eliminate that pricing structure because it's irrelevant. It's something that the town is not involved in. Anyways,
Did we get rid of that or, we just didn't replace it?
We,
It-
go ahead, Terrence.
so. The utilization of it off-site was causing some wear and tear on the equipment, and we really weren't being able to use it on our site when we wanted to use it. The original trommel screener, I believe, was bought with a community grant, and that community grant required us to go out and rent it out to other communities. The current trommel screener that we have was purchased with town funds, so there was no requirement to do it. We just, in looking at the wear and tear on the equipment and the cost of not having it as part of our operation, it wasn't beneficial from a revenue side in order to continue renting it out.
And we would rent it during our prime usage. So when we had, a need to screen compost, we couldn't because the machine was off-site. And sometimes when it did come back, wear and tear, we'd have to perform maintenance on it before we could put it into use. Plus, we were hauling that with our own staff, using our own tractor trailer, which would pull that out of the yard. And, a lot of times we needed that for operations.
Another item is we need to snow dump for small loads and such. We're looking to have a fee based upon volume and to add that to the schedule.
And that should say cubic yard.
And we would have what that price is for you for the next meeting. Two other, basically, clerical corrections. We're looking to eliminate the brush in leaves by cubic yard. We don't bill that way. And we haven't for a few years. It's all scale, going across the scale. So we just want to remove the confusion and make it clear that brush disposal and leaf disposal, wood chips would be based upon the scale rate. And we're not looking to change those rates. We're just looking to get rid of the volume structure. And then the last one, to go back to the beginning, is the bag rate. We're effectively recommending, and you saw the cost associated with the cost of the bag itself and our increasing costs with disposal. We addressed the cost for a couple of reasons with the scale rate, which took effect in January, and it goes up again on July 1st. But we would be, we're recommending effectively an 8% increase in the cost of the bag. So it would go from $20 for a roll of 10 for large to $21 for a roll of 10, which is an 8% increase in for the small. would go from $10.75 for a package of 10 to $11.60 for a package of 10. For an 85-cent increase, which effectively is a 7.9% increase.
Questions or discussions?
Question, Dave, when they switched the pricing structure to eliminate the sticker fee for the residents and cover that portion with from the tax levy, was there a target percentage or dollar value that was expected to be the tax levy contribution?
There was, but it wasn't working, and that's why we dissolved the enterprise fund and rolled it right into the tax levy now. So, because we just weren't meeting that target, it was trying to be at the time that the enterprise fund would cover at least 60% of the cost, and it wasn't. The other factor is, once it got pulled out of the, once it was no longer an enterprise fund, some of the cost basis that it had to cover went away. So it lost a couple of revenue streams as well, but it also lost the cost basis. For instance, debt service was supported by fees, now it's supported by a tax levy. But conversely, the rental income that the RTS Enterprise Fund used to get for the solar array, which was $50,000 a year, that just goes to the general fund, like all other rental income.
So for the deficit that it's projected to run this year, there's not a specific target or anything that we have to get to. It's just it is what it is.
The deficit is what the deficit is, but we try to ensure that the paid to throwback is somewhat representative of the cost of that component of the operation.
Okay.
And it's been a few years, as you see, it's since 2018 for the large bags and 2016 for the small bags. And then clearly our costs have gone up over that time. Were there any other items that the committee wanted us to look at? These are the items that we identified that we should be addressed. But and hence why we have another meeting as to specific areas the committee wanted us to look at.
How is, the only thing that's changed in more recent times is the mattresses. Right, we're losing that grant and we're increasing those fees. Is that the little work breaking even? How is that being utilized, well? People understand?
It's, yeah, the program's well utilized and certainly, I mean, I live in Boston and I see mattresses discarded into corners of parks. It's terrible. And I don't see we're not responding to illegal dumping in Needham. And I think our rate is really, that may have to go up at some point, but I think, we are, striving to provide that like kind of level, as much level funded service for residents as possible. Where we identified the problem was where commercial haulers might be trying to, take advantage of our low rate, and that's why I don't think it's gone to the select board, but you voted, I think in October of last year that you thought it would be a good idea to raise that rate to 40 for commercial mattresses. But we pay a $16 fee where we bring them to UTEC, but we have to transport them. And there's also a container involved. One of our containers was provided by the Mass DEP as a grant to start the program prior to the waste ban. And we purchased a second container to, deal with the overflow because it was a successful program, and then the waste ban happened. And, you know, we were staying on top of it, but the volume is quite high.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, those prices may need to go up. But right now, it's steady at $16. UTEC is a program that offers a lot of social benefit up in the Lowell and Lawrence area. You know, they run services for youth at risk. Kids who are unhoused, kids who are coming out of jail and don't have employment. So they reach out to those kids. They have woodworking, they have logistics, they have CDL training. And it's an important center up there in Lowell, and it, you know, was supported by the Baker administration and I think current administration, but it's good. I've been up there.
And they get their.
They process our mattresses, they get the revenue, and it helps support their programs. The kids learn warehousing, they drive the trucks, they learn route management, that sort of thing.
On the hauler sticker fees you have here, you've got 125 current and 125 proposed. Is there a reason why it's 125 proposed and no change?
Oh, because it's an Excel spreadsheet and it doesn't like words being in there.
Okay,
So it's no change.
okay. Wondering if I was missing something.
No. So,
I mean, we are a desirable spot if we wanted to look at the commercial sticker. That is something we could also look at. It's a smaller revenue number, but we could look at that.
So, this leads into sort of our next schedule, right? In the minutes of last month, we talked about, you had a schedule when presenting this to the selectmen,
that's like forward in September, you may say.
in September.
The public hearing would be the second Tuesday of September with the board voting the recommendations, the fourth Tuesday of September, and with the rates taking effect on October 1st.
So, do we vote? Are we voting today, for those recommendations, or
That's
do
the committee's
do
decision.
people want some time to think about this, or?
We do need to come back with the rate for the snow. Snow dump.
So that would be one of the next meetings to do that, so, we don't. So we should just meet at the regular time in June, and not, and of the, except the fourth, we had the fourth was the additional meeting if we needed it.
That's correct. That's correct. When we put that schedule together, we were thinking there was gonna be a much more comprehensive change in the rates, but we're not seeing that we need to do that at this time.
And we had an August date in there as well. right?
That was our backup in case we needed more time to
I thought
to
the,
do that.
okay. I thought the fourth was the. Okay,
Yes, so we have 3 meetings on the book. 2 in June and 1 in August.
do we even need two?
No,
So the question is, do we want to do a July meeting or do we want to do an August meeting? I would suggest the regular July,
there is no meeting in July.
I mean, okay. June, do we do June or August? Would it be better to be August, would be closer to, select meeting in case something comes up, then.
I think it's always good to have the vote closer to when You have to present to the select board, just so everybody remembers why they voted the way they did,
It helps me when I have to be there.
so.
So our next meeting then should be August,
It would be August 9th. I believe.
Sixth.
Sixth, thank you. So
no, I believe. Wouldn't it be our second Tuesday, right? So it was,
there was a magical reason why I think that was the date that worked for the
Yeah, maybe
majority
for
of
vacations and everything.
oh, okay. Oh,
And that's the first Tuesday of September, because the second Tuesday is the select board.
okay. How is it? It doesn't usually happen that way, does it?
No, everybody's schedules are different now.
It's, no. August sixth, my birthday, but, you know, I had no plans, and it's a weeknight, so. Is everybody okay with August sixth?
On my calendar.
Yep, that works for me.
Okay.
So there won't be any June meetings, is that right?
That's correct.
Yep.
Nor July. Okay, is that all the business?
From my standpoint, Harris.
Well, we did okay, town meeting, we did, yeah, unanimous consent and. So I guess, if I have a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Second,
all right, well, in favor, Bill,
Yes.
yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.